Thanks for joining us. I'm hoping that you'll find this webinar insightful. And I think myself as well as Victoria have a number of, I think, pretty cool insights and research notes that we'd like to share with you today. So, I'd like to start off by maybe taking a step back and talking about where the retail market is today. There's, I would say, a growing recognition amongst retailers and brands for the need for digital transformation. And personally, I think there are a number of reasons why this is important, right? And it starts with the fact that consumers today are more digital than ever. If you think about it, e-commerce and mobile commerce have driven this, mentality of instant gratification on the consumer's part, where they have access to what we consider to be an unprecedented level of product choice. We're all consumers, so we understand this. We can buy products at any time of day or night. We can comparison shop based on price, based on features, based on delivery window. And because of this, consumers have been more and more demanding, which means that retailers and brands need to find ways to shift accordingly and maintain what I would consider to be customer stickiness or customer loyalty. So with that in mind, maybe one of the first things I'd like to do is ask Victoria, given how closely you follow the retail space, Victoria, I was wondering, what are the interesting trends that you're noticing in the market, right? And, I just called out this, shift with the consumers being more digital. I'm wondering, from a retail and brand point of view, what are some of the critical initiatives that you're finding in your research? And, what do you see today?
Sure. Thank you, Kwa, and thank you, Heather, for having me here today. For those of you who are not familiar with IDC, we are a global analyst firm, and we really focus on what impacts technology is having on different industries today. So, Kwa, I think you really hit it on the head when you said that consumerization of instant gratification is driving change for our businesses, and as retailers, we need to react. And so we've conducted several surveys with the retailers. Many of you, hopefully on the phone, have helped us with this research. But to really drive to the root cause, we wanted to look at what are the top areas that really are driving this change in the supply chain for you as retailers and wholesalers as well as manufacturers. And what we found is that in your responses, some of those top driving forces really revolve around the new technology that is enabling you to grow and compete, as well as drive those internal costs downward. And really, together, all of these play cohesively, and you really can't solve one problem without the other in many ways. So we'll talk a little bit more about that today, but really another underlying cause of that, we wanted to understand how likely you believe it is that you'll be disrupted going forward and why these forces are being driven. So on this next slide, we can really see that we asked you how likely is it that you will be disrupted, and almost 20% of you said that it's already happened. You've been disrupted by some of your competitors or peers, or just your customers have really driven you to a point where you aren't ready to compete today. And another 40% of you think that within the next year, you'll also be disrupted. And really, as an overarching picture, the message is across, things need to change, and we really need to transform the way we've done our business and the way our processes are established. So in order to figure out, what is it that you're doing today to make yourselves more successful, we looked at what these priorities are. So you can see on this next visual that when we asked you what your top priorities today are, over 60% of you said that efficiency and effectiveness is important today. So what am I doing? What are my processes that are going to make me more effective and efficient? How can I compete with that instant gratification? How am I getting my designs to market faster? How am I competing against many of my peers? But what was interesting is that 3 years from now, you believe, many of you who responded, said that this is really going to shift to resiliency against external disruptions. So what are you going to do today? What types of tools are you investing in today to make yourself efficient, drive down that cost, meet that consumer expectation, but that tomorrow will set you up to be successful and resilient against this disruption that 60% of you said either already happened or is going to happen this year? And really, to understand that, we wanted to look at what it is that's driving your value and your design thought process today. So we'll see on this next slide that today we asked you, what are the factors that are leading this vision? What is it that is your overarching goal that really sets you apart? And what's interesting about this visual is that we conduct this survey every other year for the last 10 years. And up until about a year and a half ago, the response, the number one priority you always said was cost, right? We want to drive our costs down. We want to be able to have higher margins and really meet customer price expectations. But this shifted about 2 years ago, where product quality became king and was really the leading preference. And this is driven, to Qua's point, if you can do comparison shopping on your phone and you can look at what different retailers are offering to the consumer, then why wouldn't you? And if a product comes out and the quality isn't great, what's stopping someone from going online and saying, look, this retailer didn't meet my expectations, or this product wasn't in line with what I was expecting from this brand. And so you cannot miss out on quality without affecting your service levels and your costs, right? So this is all a domino, but it's really been an interesting paradigm shift that quality has trumped over cost priorities in the retail space. So, I'm curious, what are some of your gut reactions to some of these findings?
Actually, I think it well aligns with what we found here. I would say there are a lot of times where it'll flip-flop between cost versus time to market versus product quality, and it's interesting because like you called out, over the past few years, there's this recognition that, hey, we need to, as a retailer or brand, we need to compete not just on cost, right? But we need to make sure that we're getting a lot of positive feedback from consumers, because we want to not just capture that first dollar from a given consumer, but we want them to keep coming back to us. And a great way to do that is actually produce not just products that resonate, but products that resonate that also stand up to the quality demands of the consumer. So this is, I would say, very much in line with what we've heard as well. So a couple of other things that I also wanted to call out here, and Victoria, thanks for sharing this with me. I appreciate it. If I can, I want to maybe ask you another question here. We often hear that digital transformation is necessary, but oftentimes when I speak to retailers and brands, they ask me, well, what does working digitally really mean, right? I think some retailers and brands might think, well, working digitally just means leveraging digital tools, right? Meaning, hey, I've got a PLM system, and my digital. But I don't know if that would be kind of a most comprehensive answer. So maybe a question back to you is, how would you answer them? What guidance can you provide to the folks that are on the call today in terms of enabling them to be, digitally transformed?
Yeah, sure. And while you're right, people ask, what is it to work digital, and what is this digital transformation buzzword that we keep hearing, and are we there yet? I mean, so there's so many questions that really spur this. So to really simplify it, at IDC, we have defined digital transformation as transforming your decision-making with technology. So this is a crucible moment. You're not going in the same way that you're going to come out. It's not just that you happen to use a computer or use a new tool to do one thing. It's that you establish and look at all the processes that you have across, whether that be your design processes or just you as a retailer as a whole or a wholesaler, and connecting the information and centralizing the information by which everyone's working in digital tools, right? So transforming those decisions using the tools that they are creating. And within retail specifically, we have defined a new mission. And within that, we have said that it is digital transformation truly is creating experiences that blend the digital and physical to make purchases in the stream of life. The customer has one experience on their digital or on their phone. They have another experience when they walk into your store. And if it isn't cohesive, then they're confused, right? Why can't I see the types of products that I expect? So it's really making a cohesive experience across all of that. And there's two sides to it, right? So there's the automated supply side, and this is don't ever make me ask for it. What I'm expecting should be, like if it's on my phone, it should be in the store, right? That's the expectation. Or if I've seen it somewhere else, I should be able to get it. But on the flip side, it's the augmented living. So don't make me ever live without it. If I can envision it and I can imagine it, why isn't it in the store? And even though we as retailers know that this isn't feasible, I can't create every expectation, what are we doing to really enable that? And how are we creating those cohesive experiences so that there isn't a disconnect between what I believe is available or what I expect to be available based on those experiences? And I know some of the retailers on the line are probably looking at this going, well, that's a lot of movement, that's a lot of moving parts, and maybe we're not even off of Excel yet, or they could feel that they aren't ready for this, and this is a lot to take in at once. So don't worry. We did some research, and what we found is that across all the different retailers, and we'll see on this next chart that we surveyed all of you, and we wanted to understand what level of connectivity that you had. And what we found is that only 20% of retailers and wholesalers are operating at a managed or optimized state. That means that your systems are all talking to each other, you have a cohesive, simplified, collaborative view of the truth, and that you're working from the same instance, meaning that 80% of retailers and wholesalers aren't. Some of you do have information that's connected, but maybe it doesn't go all the way through the whole system, or not all your suppliers are talking to your designers who are talking to, the different retail outlets and the feedback loop from your marketers. So really, it can be daunting when you're looking at all this, but don't worry, we're trying to help you get there step by step, and it is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. But if you're going to compete in the retail of tomorrow, then you need to get started today. So that's why we're here. We're going to try and help you understand where you rack and stack and against your peers, and help you get there step by step. And with that, I believe we have a question for all of you listening in today that we want to learn more about what you are experiencing. So I'm going to hand it to Heather.
Right, okay, yes, so this is your time to shine, you guys on the line here. We have a poll question that we would really like you to answer, and I'm going to launch that for about 30 seconds. So it would be great if you could possibly give us what you think are the answers to these questions. So if you can vote for whichever ones that you think are most appropriate to you. It's lovely watching these numbers tick by. There we go. So thank you for that. I will close the poll now. And we'll get back to our presentation.
So I believe, I was at LiveWorks this year, and I think you guys asked a similar question. I'm curious, what did you guys find? What were you hearing across the audience?
Yeah, so actually, thanks for calling that out, Victoria. For those of you who are on the call and actually don't know what LiveWorks is, it's our annual user conference that we host here in Boston, and it's what we call the largest digital transformation conference in the world, really. And we always invite all of our retail customers there. We had about 150 different attendees from different retailers and brands. Both apparel, footwear, as well as accessories and consumer goods. And we actually asked them the same question here that was just shown on screen in terms of what is perhaps the most significant initiative facing them today. And interestingly enough, 56% of the attendees there that we surveyed said that supply chain optimization and transparency was the most important. So that was the top thing. And then the second most ranked initiative was driving down costs. And then the third one was then breaking into new product categories. So Victoria, I think that what we found out at LiveWorks actually well matches the survey that you did, right? Where cost was number 2, number 1 was supply chain transparency and optimization, which really leads into that efficiency call out that you had mentioned earlier. So if you don't mind, I actually wanted to take some time now to actually start talking about how can we enable this digital transformation? I really like your definition of digital transformation, by the way, because I think that it really isn't just about using digital tools; it's about process improvement as well. And I want to maybe talk a little bit about that process piece. I think most of us in the retail industry already well understand the value of using tools and a single source of truth, right? And if you think about it, that's what PLM or product lifecycle management systems do today. it can help with the product development process because within PLM, you can manage product specs or tech packs, and you can gain efficiencies in collaboration, track against development calendars, get visibility into cost factors, for example. But really, when you think about it from a process perspective, digital transformation can actually occur before you even use a PLM system, right? A PLM system manages structured data very well, right? Structured data meaning, the tech pack, if you would, or the product spec. But there's an opportunity for retailers and brands to improve how they work with the supply chain before a product spec or tech pack even begins to be developed or managed in a PLM system. So merchandisers, designers, and other key stakeholders like sourcing managers can work with their suppliers earlier on when a product really is only a concept, or when seasonal direction is only being established, and silhouettes haven't been, let's just say, decided upon yet. So I think that there's an opportunity there where all the different key stakeholders, along with the supply chain, can share ideas early on, right? And that's, I think, a change in process there. And one way to think about this is that why wait for a tech pack to start working with your suppliers? Whether they be the mills that you're working with, or the tanneries that you're working with, or the finished goods factories or vendors that you're working. Why not collaborate earlier during ideation? So for us, right, and the next slide actually well describes this. Working earlier with internal and external folks during that ideation process is what we call digital concept management. Like I said earlier, PLM is product development, and that's all about managing structured data. But the process of digital concept management allows you to actually work earlier and actually work rapidly and work iteratively. So I know that concept management has been around for a while as a critical apparel and footwear development process. And I know that a lot of you kind of already do concept management because you create poster boards or foam boards where you pin together different photos or fabric swatches or magazine clippings, or maybe even photos that you may have taken during competitive shopping or during Fashion Week. But to be honest, creating these physical trend boards or mood boards isn't the best way to collaborate with your supply chain or even collaborate internally. There's actually a better way to work. Instead of the physical trend boards or mood boards, why not create digital ones? Because you can manage ideas digitally on these digital boards, it might be actually easier to capture the ideas and actually share those. So imagine, you could be surfing online, and I know many of your designers use something like Pinterest, right, to capture inspirations. But imagine being able to take, photos from online sources, from Pinterest, from your mobile device, and being able to drag and drop them onto digital mood boards. And then imagine those digital mood boards being able to manage more than just images, right? I mean, images aren't just a source of inspiration, but there could be also video that you may have captured, going to Fashion Week. You may want to actually, for example, if you're a merchandiser, drop in an Excel or a PowerPoint to capture product requirements or maybe product costs. Designers might want to not just manage images that they've captured from their phones, but they might want to be able to drop in an Illustrator or Photoshop file that contains silhouettes and designs from previous seasons, right? So being able to manage trends digitally is actually better than the physical analog, if you would, because all of the different file types can be managed, or I should say many different file types can be managed, number one. And then on top of that, right, those different file types can be converted to viewables for everyone to easily see, as well as for everyone to easily access. So if you're wondering, well, what does a digital concept management tool look like? There's a screenshot of actually one of our tools that we call Canvas that's on display right now. And this is actually a great example here. So what you're seeing is actually a trend board for women's swimwear for summer 2019. And what I want to call out is, notice how that even fabric ideas and prints and patterns can be captured here along with the different silhouettes for women's swimwear. And a great thing about a tool like Canvas that you're seeing on screen is that these ideas can be shared with suppliers in a secure manner, right? In a more efficient manner. You don't actually have to take, a photo of a trend board or a mood board that you may have created physically and email that, right? You can actually invite your suppliers or other stakeholders, like maybe, fabric mills, to the board, and they can actually start, reviewing everything in this, secure space, if you would. And a really good digital concept management tool can actually go beyond just enabling supply chain collaboration and optimization. So let's talk a little bit about product quality, because product quality was ranked high in your report there, Victoria. So oftentimes I think one of the primary causes for poor product quality is a lack of clear, unambiguous product information, right? So ideas and concepts can potentially be misinterpreted or poorly communicated across both internal teams and with factories, simply because folks just aren't capturing that information digitally. For example, you could use a physical mood board to capture certain silhouettes and fabric direction, but then someone, perhaps a tech designer or a product developer, would need to re-enter that information into a PLM system, right? Double or maybe even triple data entry not only leads to errors, but frankly, I think frustration from your end users. So sometimes, those errors might not be caught until much later in the development process, and I think that you all can probably, empathize with a situation where you've gotten a sample back from a supplier only to realize, hey, it's not what you wanted, and the reason why it's not what you wanted is because you weren't actually very clear in your requirements in the first place. So leveraging a DCM or digital concept management tool like Canvas actually can eliminate that, because what it can do is actually have direct integration into PLM. And I think that's actually one of the other important things that you had called out, Victoria, that digital transformation isn't just about siloed digital tools, but it's about the integration of all those tools to work better to support a new process or a new way of working. And an integration from a mood board, a digital mood board, into a PLM system is a great example of that. So if you would, imagine dragging and dropping images that represent your ideas, onto a trend board. So imagine maybe capturing some silhouettes of some sweater designs, right? And then being able to tag those different silhouettes, those images of those sweater designs, with certain keywords and descriptors. So, for example, you might have a cardigan that you've dragged onto a mood board, and you might want to classify it as a women's top. You might also want to be able to specify, well, hey, this is what I think the primary fabric should be, as well as maybe the desired size range or size category, and maybe the potential factory, and maybe the initial cost and margin. So using a digital mood board, you can actually capture all that additional attribution or characteristics. And then I would say that an even better tool, a better concept management tool, would actually be able to take not only the imagery, but also all those attributes and characteristics and automatically go launch product creation in a PLM system. And what that does, if you really think about it, is that it allows you to eliminate the need for double data entry, right? You quickly go from ideation to being able to, maybe lightly describe those ideas to then full product launch, right? And then from there, PLM can then start to manage all that other structured data, like the, full BOM or the full measurements and the grades, et cetera. But you're eliminating the need for the PD or the TD to actually go in and rekey information. And, not only are we limiting double data entry there, but anything that you're any of the ideas that you're vetting out on that trend board can actually be clearly then transmitted or transferred over into the PLM system. So, in summary, if you would, as a process, DCM can actually enable earlier collaboration and eliminate confusion. And on the next slide here, there are a couple of other maybe use cases that I'd like to talk about a little bit. So, like I mentioned earlier, you can use a digital concept management tool like Canvas to communicate requirements and ideas with vendors. So you could share, fabric direction, print and pattern direction with your fabric mills, with maybe external design partners. Of course, you can use something like Canvas to communicate, trends and moods. But you can also do more than that, right? You can actually validate, an initial FOB from your suppliers, as another example. So share product ideas, and then also ask your suppliers, hey, do you have any other ideas that you might want to propose? So if I go back to that swimwear, example there, you might have a supplier that comes back and says, well, hey, not only do we have, this, not only can we produce, some of these garments that you're requesting, but, we have also some accessories that might match, the swimwear that you're trying to deliver to market there. Certainly, like I mentioned earlier, a good DCM tool could support the use case of product creation within PLM. Okay, and then I think that one of the unique things that a good digital concept management tool should have is integration with social media, right? Because today, and let's face it, a lot of times social media and kind of the customer engagement that's on social media will drive future product designs, right? Consumers are more demanding, like I said earlier, and based on what they're seeing, how they're reacting to things like Fashion Week or how they're reacting to certain trends, will then provide inspiration to your design team. So a good tool like Canvas has the opportunity to not only pull in data from, let's just say local sources, meaning imagery from a designer's local laptop or desktop, but also be able to pull imagery from Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, etc. So, overall, I think that, working digitally earlier on right, during the concept management phase, not just the product development phase, provides a plethora of value that I think people potentially might not actually see immediately, right? Because I think a lot of times when people think about digital design or working digitally, they think about PLM. But what we're urging here is to actually think about working in digital ways ahead of PLM. So I said a lot there. Victoria, anything else that you wanted to add? Maybe some insights in terms of what I just mentioned and kind of the reaction that you may see in the market there to digital tools like Canvas.
Yeah, I totally agree, Kwa. I mean, as you hit the nail on the head in terms of in design process, there's so many moving parts and there's so much information, and then to consolidate that information and through that collaboration and put it all in one place so that it is consistent across everyone who has to participate in your design, creation, and actual delivery process. It's a lot, and so really having those digital tools to put it all in one place, I think you really, all of the yes, you really hit it on the nail on the head. But yeah, so to your point though, there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of different pieces that go into this strategy. And so at IDC, we've actually tried to break it out into more bite-sized consumable pieces for all of our retailers. And this visual is across all of retail, so it's not just to product lifecycle management or to design processes. This is retail as a whole, but really if you focus in on that curated merchandising lifecycle management, that is the wheel by which we really focus into this use case. And when we're looking at this, we really wanted to understand, retailers' motivations and how high of a priority this is on their next stages. So we asked them, what their priority was. So on this next slide, these are just 3 of those use cases that we focused in on, but the most relevant to the design facet. But what you'll notice is that product innovation within digital product development, 80% of retailers said that this was going to be essential, a high priority, or within their standard realm of just general priorities moving forward over the next 12 to 24 months. So, the vast majority that we talked about earlier, 80% weren't quite at that modern state yet, but 80% know that this has to be a priority going forward. And I wanted to make sure that I included intelligent product design around 3D designing and review and crowdsourced ideation, because to your point, social media is also a highly relevant piece. Being able to talk to your co-collaborators across regions, across various participants in your design process, that's important too. And retailers have really recognized that. As well as I know that within, PTC, you guys also have some really awesome tools in augmented and virtual reality that you're able to use in the design process, which I know we haven't had time to really get into depth on them here, but I think that's also a very important part of the concept management design. So now on this next slide, we see that collaborative design investments going forward in the next 12 to 24 months. We wanted to know just around collaboration. Collaboration is so important. You hit it on the head when you said it ensures, the quality is there and that you're talking through all of the different issues that you might face. And retailers agree, if you're looking at this, 25% are already implemented. That really aligns with those who are already digitally transformed. And then another, roughly 20% are implementing right now. Like they're going live and they're in process because they understand the value of collaborating across all those different participants. And yet another 20% said that they're going to be live on it in the next 12 months. So if 65% of retailers are collaborating, they're communicating, they're making sure that that product quality promise that they made to their customers is going to be there. If you're in that 35% that isn't, it's time to start moving, because you're going to be, toast at the end of the day if you don't. And really participating in that collaboration will only serve you well down the line, as your customers will really feel it in the product that you're putting out there. And, across all of your suppliers, the relationships will be stronger if you're communicating your needs and what the expectation is. So really, 65%, it's exciting, but there's so much work left to do. So I hope that if you're a retailer on the line and you're looking at this, I hope you're gearing up for how to get involved and really drive this message forward with everyone else in your supply chain. Now I am curious, we have another poll question lined up, so I'm going to hand it back over to Heather, but we want to know about what your thoughts are on digital storyboarding. So I'm going to hand it over to Heather to conduct that next poll survey.
Fantastic. Thank you both for those valuable insights. So yes, as Victoria said, we're going to ask another question of you guys. And this one is, based on what you've heard today on digital storyboards, which of the following use cases would benefit your organization? So can you tell us whether it's capture inspirations, ideas and concepts in one place, or collaborate with global suppliers to co-design or get feedback? More alignment with social trends to drive on-trend design, or instantly upload research material to a digital space. And it's really interesting to get your feedback in this, although I appreciate you guys have come here to learn today, but it's important that we also learn from you. And I know this is information that both Victoria and Kwa will find really useful moving forward. So we'll just take a few minutes, or just a few extra seconds, I should say, just to let you fill in and answer these questions. That's great. So thank you very much. So Victoria, I believe you'd like to chime in at this point.
Yeah, actually, I had a question for Kwa. And all the different use cases you talked through, Kwa, were really interesting, and I think that they're so applicable. And I'm hoping, and I believe that everyone who's listening also probably agrees. But there's so many different use cases in working digitally through this content management. What can benefits gain from using another tool in their tool belt and really driving that transformation forward?
Yeah, so great question there, Victoria. Thanks for actually asking that. It would be kind of remiss of us here at PTC to talk about a concept like digital storyboarding and all the different capabilities and kind of the different use cases without actually talking about the value as well. But to us, there really are solid and quantifiable benefits to digital concept management. When I spoke about collaboration efficiencies earlier, I hinted at that there would be some time savings that retailers and brands can expect with a tool like Canvas. From our own time studies, where we measure the time and effort it takes for traditional non-digital concept management to capture imagery and share files through email and all the rigmarole or back and forth that requires, to being able to convert to a centralized repository that can create digital storyboards that could be shared and annotated and responded in real time, that actually provides quite a bit of value. From our own calculations, an immediate 2 weeks of cycle time reduction can happen there just by purely capturing your information, digitally and being able to share that. We've heard actually from other customers and brands who have started using this tool that they estimate anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, where they can, like I said, start sharing ideas, start sharing prints and patterns, start sharing silhouettes with their suppliers earlier on before they start managing structured data within PLM. And then on top of that, right, so if you just look beyond using a digital storyboarding tool, right, and you look actually for the ability to change process and the ability for a digital concept management tool to connect with PLM, right, so that whole integration of digital tools concept there, you can actually enable earlier product creation, like I said, about 10 minutes ago. And you can also reduce errors and improve product quality by clearly communicating product needs and seasonal direction and fabric direction, trim and color direction, etc. So we think that by doing that, by connecting, a digital storyboarding tool with PLM, retailers and brands stand to gain 4 weeks of extra time savings there. So a total of 6 weeks in development time can be actually saved off of your development calendar. And that's why, I'm actually pretty excited about this. I think that's significant, right? Anytime you can reduce time out of your calendar, as well as improve product quality and improve the way that you're working with your suppliers, gets me pretty excited. So, overall, for those of you, the retailers and brands that are on the call, I urge you to actually, take a look at the way that you're managing concepts and ideas today. Take a look at the process that you're using to engage with your suppliers. See if you can actually engage with them early on, get their feedback on whether or not a design is feasible, on an early FOB cost, on possible fabric sources or trim sources. You're going to find that if you do that earlier on, right, before you start managing structured data, and if you do that with a connected, storyboarding tool, you're going to be able to stand to gain, multiple weeks of time saved, as well as higher product quality there. So with that, I think maybe Heather, we have a few minutes left. Maybe it's time for one last poll question.
Yes, thank you. Well, thanks again to both Victoria and yourself, Kwa, for taking the time to share these thoughts with us today. And yes, before we get to answering any of the questions that have come in from our avid listeners today, we do have a final poll question to ask of you. So here you go on your screen. What do you feel are the internal barriers to preventing the adoption of this type of solution? So if you can tell us whether it's convincing users to work digitally, or needing a greater understanding of use cases or value needed, concerned that creativity could be impacted, too much unconstructed data, or focused on other information projects. So we'll just hang on for a couple extra seconds just to get you all, give you all an opportunity to give us your thoughts. And then we'll also wait for any questions to come in so we can put those to our speakers for today. Great. You've all done really well today. We've had some a brilliant level of answers. So thank you all for taking part. I'm just going to close that before we carry on. Okay. So I'd like to put some questions to our speakers today. So if that's okay, I'm going to start with some of the questions that have come in. This one I'm going to put to Victoria. I'm going to take it in turn so nobody feels like they're left out. So Victoria, here's a question. We're a fast fashion retailer interested in implementing a digital storyboard solution. Currently, we're using foam core boards to aggregate ideas. So how should we approach this transformation project, both from a technical and a cultural standpoint?
Sure. Yeah. So if you're today very manual, it sounds like if you're mostly using corkboards and not really, I mean, from the question, I can't really tell if you're using any technology yet, but I think the biggest, no matter what project it is, the most important starting point really is to engage with your end users, your line of business folks, your designers, and get them to understand what the options are in the technology space. If they feel like you just walk in and say, hey, we're going to open and use this great new technology, no one likes to change the way they've been doing things for a long time. So bringing them into that decision process. Hey, I heard about this really cool technology or this new way of doing this process, and it's going to save you some time. Bring them into that discussion up front. We actually asked in our, in our survey, it wasn't shown earlier, but we asked our retailers, what it was that was holding them back. I know you guys just answered a similar poll question, so I'm excited to see what the final responses were on that end. But what we found is the number one biggest constraint holding many of our retailers back is change management. And to the point, no one loves change. So really bringing them into it and helping them understand will help you, tenfold during any implementation or changes going technical. Now, on the actual technical front, really look at the processes you're trying to establish. And it sounds like you already know, like, hey, I work off of, form core boards. And so it sounds like you already have your head wrapped around that, but really look at what is there to gain, what types of processes can be streamlined or can be converted, and have that conversation, up front and identify, look at the different tools that are out there and what can solve those problems, right? Sometimes we try and take a square peg and put it into a round hole. So really look at, these are the processes I need to adjust and change for, and what types of tools are out there. And then talk with your team about it and get them involved, because if the front lines, if your designers are the ones who are helping make that decision, the transition will be so much faster and so much easier because they will understand the value. And that's, having lived through that, that's definitely the way to go. So thank you. Thanks for asking that.
That's great. Thanks, Victoria. Thank you. Okay, Kwa, this is a question I'm going to put to you this time. So we're PLM users and would like to understand if it's possible to capture ideas using your storyboard solution and then use those ideas to actually create a real product in a PLM solution.
Yeah, absolutely, right. I mean, that was one of the things that I was trying to stress earlier on, that when you think about digital transformation, it isn't just about using digital tools like a digital content management tool like Canvas. It isn't just about being able to create digital storyboards or mood boards or trend boards, but it's also changing the way that you work and being able to take, for example, those ideas and launch products from them or launch product creation from them. So, to maybe answer the question more explicitly here, absolutely, you can use a tool like Canvas and capture your ideas and attribute them, meaning describe that idea, right? Describe that image. What is it? Oh, it's a cardigan sweater. It's a single piece women's swimsuit. It's a men's trench. Maybe describe it even more. Specify things like its primary fabric or who that finished good factory might be. But then, once you describe it in your digital storyboarding tool, you should be able to take that information and then automatically create products within your PLM system. So like I said earlier, a great digital concept management tool or a great digital storyboarding tool should be able to connect to PLM and automatically transfer all that information along with the imagery over to PLM and actually get PLM to automatically create a product with all that relevant information to reduce, data entry and also to reduce any data entry errors, right? So yes, again, quite simply, a good tool should be able to do that, and our Canvas tool can do that.
Excellent, that's great. Thank you, Kwa. Okay, Victoria, why is the digital design revolution happening now? Research shows that storyboards and creative design functionality more generally have suddenly become top of mind for brands and retailers. Is it a matter of competitive pressures or technological maturity, a combination of both, or something else? It's a nice long question.
Yeah, it's a lot of questions. Yeah. So, okay. Well, I'm going to go back to the survey that I mentioned earlier, where we asked about things that were getting in the way, and then I'll kind of come back. There's a lot of parts to this, so let's see what I can do. So, I mentioned earlier change management was a really big issue. The number 2 response we actually had in that survey was around centralizing information, right? So finding one place, centralizing all of the data into one repository, right? So, we talk about storyboards having all that information, all those design ideas, and just all that information in one place. If retailers are acknowledging that this is one of their biggest struggles or biggest issues going forward, then obviously they're going to want to tackle that because it's holding them back. So I believe part of that question, at the end, you were asking, is it competitive pressure? Is it technology maturity or combo? It's both, right? So if your peers are doing it and they're able to consolidate all their information and get ideas to market faster, I think Kwa mentioned 6 weeks faster. If that's fashion, that's a lifetime, right? So if I'm trying to get all of my ideas out to market faster, just getting all that information in one place, it speeds up your design process so much, and really gives you a competitive advantage. So competition, that's where that side of it. But the technology maturity, you're right. If I can get all of that information in one place, I want that. So of course it's going to come up more often if all of a sudden there's a tool that is going to make me more efficient, more effective, and really give me that competitive advantage. So I think it's a combination of the maturity of the market. I think it's also hugely in part to just the competitive pressures that retailers are feeling. So I think it's both. I don't think there's one right answer, but a combination of all of the above. Hopefully that answered all the questions in that, because that was a long question.
Yeah, that's a long question. Yes, thanks for that, Victoria. Okay, so Kwach, then, we're thinking about designing digitally and would like to understand some short-term quick wins we can target. What would you say are the most logical analog gaps to plug?
Yeah, so good question there. Obviously, number one, get rid of the foam core boards that you're using, right? Use something digital. Oftentimes when I talk to retailers and brands, they're saying, well, wait a minute, Kwa, we already use a tool and it's called PowerPoint, to capture our quote unquote digital storyboards. But I would say, hey, PowerPoint actually has limitations because you have to email that to people or you put it on a shared drive and, you have to worry about, well, who's editing it? Leveraging something like an online digital storyboarding tool is actually better than something like a PowerPoint because multiple people can be accessing it at once. our tool Canvas can actually support real-time collaboration, and that's actually a great gap there that you can fill, because much like you can get multiple people together in a physical space and review a physical trend board, if you have it digitally, not only can you review it together in the same meeting room, but you can also invite other people from, let's just say, other design centers around the world, as well as your supply chain to actually, or your suppliers, I should say, to actually go look at them either at the same time that you are, or whenever it's convenient for them. Additionally, another gap to fill that a good digital storyboarding tool can address is incorporation of social media. I mentioned this earlier, but today a lot of designers leverage Pinterest, and they create pin boards or Pinterest boards to capture ideas, and sometimes they share that internally. Well, Pinterest isn't the only source of inspiration. Instagram is actually becoming quite popular. Certainly, there's always been Twitter. There's Facebook, and so our Canvas tool actually allows you to read in trend streams, or actually import in, and I should say see, and then also import these streams of trending imagery from all those different social media websites. And then on top of that, one of the things that we do is we provide the ability for a designer to surf any website, whether it's Pinterest or Vogue, or juststyle.com, or other industry websites, and actually just simply drag and drop images that they see there onto a Canvas board. So there's quite a bit of value there in being able to work digitally. And there's also actually one other question here that I think came up that I wanted to address, because I think some of you may be thinking, well, hey, 2 to 6 weeks of time savings, that's great, but what's the investment required to work digitally or to capture digital storyboards? The investment is actually quite low. There are, let's just say, a number of different offerings that are available on the market that are SaaS solutions. Our solution here at PTC that we're calling Canvas is also SaaS enabled, meaning it's cloud hosted, and the per user cost to subscribe to it on a monthly or yearly basis is actually quite low. And then on top of that, unlike the other SaaS provided digital content management tools or digital storyboard tools, our solution actually connects to PLM as well. And so if you think about not just the cost, but the time savings, as well as the product quality improvements that you're going to get to have a connected storyboard tool with a PLM tool, I mean, it certainly offsets whatever cost it is. But if you guys are interested, I don't I can't see who asked that question, but if you guys are interested, just reach out to us, and certainly we can review the pricing for you for our Canvas tool.
You beat me to it then, Kwa. I was going to ask you that question. Well, we've had quite a few questions come in, and it's really difficult to aggregate them, so I do apologise. But we're coming to the end of our session for today. But what I'm going to do, I think it's probably easier for me to send these questions through, both through to Victoria and to Kwa, so they can answer you offline, because it is, believe me, it's quite complicated reading through all the questions and deciding who's who and which question to ask. But we really do appreciate them coming in, and we would definitely forward them through, so you can be answered offline. So we've come to the end of today's full session. So as I did indicate earlier, we have recorded this event. So that gives you an opportunity to view again and to take on board some of the information that you've heard. And if needs be, you can share it with your colleagues too. But I would also like to invite you to check out some of the other information, some of the resources available to you via PTC, which you can see on your screen now. You can see some digital storyboarding capabilities that retailers are looking for, as well as how this technology can help you by accessing some of this content. So I'll leave this screen up for you for a short while, just so you can copy and paste it or take a screen grab and check out some of these resources a little bit later. So thank you again to both of our speakers for today, to Victoria and to Kwa, for making it a really informative session. And thanks also to our audience, because I appreciate that it's not always what you're expecting to have to answer some questions as you've come to learn, but it's really helpful, and it was really good to see so many of you taking part. We hope you found it a really valuable session today, and hopefully you'll return to listen and to take part in some of the future webcasts from PTC and also IDC. So thank you all, and look forward to hearing from you all again very soon.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Victoria. And thank you to all of our audience members.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.